that kind of went viral earlier this year. He's right there. Hi, Parker. And that's my daughter, Ellie. By the way, when Mom gets here, we have to give her a pass. So here you go. It's a family affair. We drove out from Chicago. Well, they did. I took a flight because I had late meetings. And that's what kind of husband I am. I just let them drive for 7.5 hours in the rain. How's everyone doing today? Good? Sweet. Hello, it's great to be here. I've never been to Columbus before. Chris, who organizes GDEX, invited me to come speak, and I thought it would be awesome to come by and meet a bunch of y'all and play some games and stuff. And I also want to know what everyone's here, what are you doing? How many developers are in the room? Handful of developers. How many students studying game development? No? How many just gamers? If y'all don't put up your hand, then I don't know why you're here. And then whoever didn't put up their hand, why did you come to this talk today? Anyone?
Killer Instinct is like my favorite game.
Okay.
I was like, hey.
Killer Instinct is a favorite game. That's awesome. Cool. All right, well, I'm going to tell you guys some stories about my career, and hopefully they're interesting and engaging. And if not, then just boo me and give me a 1-star on Yelp. So let's rock and roll. So my career started in 1996. I went to Simon Fraser University up in BC, Canada. I'm from a small farm town called Abbotsford, right on the border. And I flunked out of college, and I decided to get a job testing video games at EA back then. And my career path has taken me to a lot of cool companies throughout the years, from quality assurance at the start, testing video games, up to production, and then into business development, product development. And now I'm the CEO at Iron Galaxy Studios, based in Chicago and Orlando. I'm living in Chicago right now, moved from the Bay Area. But many people know me from this job when I was at PlayStation. So I launched the PS4, PSVR, a bunch of other cool stuff there, where I was the vice president of all these words. Third-party relations, developer technology group. So my job was to meet with publishers and developers all around the world. Do we even need that? Do we need the mic? Yeah, okay. Somebody said, a couple people said yeah. And at PlayStation, I got to do a lot of cool stuff. I got to meet with developers from all over the world. I wonder if Mom's waiting outside at the door. Do you think she is? Should I check my phone? Hold on. This is DIY, right? Got the sound working. What? Do you want to go check? You want the microphone? No. Oh, my phone. Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't need it. All right, I'm going to give my daughter my phone. Stay out of iMessage. I'm kidding. You want me to unlock it?
What?
I'll unlock it.
Yep.
Face ID. It's the future. All right. Cool. So, yeah, I was at PlayStation, did a lot of fun stuff. Got to do partnerships with all kinds of publishers, developers all over the world. Got to do a big Star Wars partnership, Call of Duty partnership, bunch of like big corporate nerdy stuff, and got to do some really neat stuff like the PlayStation Experience Shenmue partnership to bring back Shenmue, which was really neat. And I wanted to start with a little video from game trailers. You won't be able to hear it unless you're quiet. So this is me on stage at E3 2015. And these guys are huge Shenmue fans.
Dude, this is a crazy
So kind of a neat moment where we got to basically bring back Shenmue. It's a game that hadn't been out in a long time, and brought that back. And a lot of people are a lot of fans. And I have a secret. I'm not a huge Shenmue fan. I'm not. But so many people were. And so our job was to scour the earth for all the cool stuff that people hadn't been getting for a long time and try to bring it back to the platform, which is really important to us. We did a huge indie partnership, right, where we went around and scoured the earth for all kinds of cool games. The Witness came out. We did No Man's Sky partnership, Octodad, Outlast, Transistor. What we really wanted to do was we wanted to create an awesome platform for independent developers. The platforms primarily had sort of ignored indie developers, so it was really important for us to stand out and give them a big, huge venue to be able to talk about stuff. And I also, because I'm not really a corporate guy, I never wanted to be a spokesperson at PlayStation. It's not what I do. I just like making games, and I'm been nerdy about games since I had my Tandy 16 and ran a BBS in high school. But they let me do some really dumb stuff at PlayStation, like this commercial here.
This is how you share
So I don't know if you remember that, but that was an idea that I came up with on the flight down to E3. It was 2013, I think it was, and Microsoft had talked about their DRM stuff and how you got to do this and you got to hand over that, and then you're gonna, if you buy one copy, you can give it to your friends. It was the most convoluted thing, and I was like, we should do a website too that's just like one slide and just like 2 points. And then I'm like, you know what we should do? We should just like hand someone a copy of a game. So I sent out the email to everyone, all the executives, and I'm like, I have this dumb idea. And by the time I land, 3 of the executives had signed off on it. They're like, we're doing this. And we're shooting it in the backstage at E3 while we're practicing and doing in the green room. And so I went to Shu Yoshida, right, who's in it with me, who's the head of president of Worldwide Studios, and I said, hey, I have this idea. I think you need to do it with maybe somebody from Guerrilla Games, like Herman, who runs the studio. And he goes, it's your idea. You're in it with me. And so we did that dumb thing that now has over 17 million views and kind of became a staple of the cheekiness. I then went on to troll Microsoft Phil Spencer, who would always wear indie logos to all of the shows, and so I made a shirt that said Token Indie logo just to poke some fun. And then the other thing that Microsoft did is when you're an independent developer, they wouldn't let you come out first on PlayStation and then release your game later on Microsoft, which really was frustrating because we want to be pro-developer, and that was really important to us. So a lot of people didn't know the clause that was in their contract, so I released this tweet. In the interest of transparency, I want to share a dev clause that lists which platforms you cannot release on before you release on PlayStation, and the list is empty. So that caught a bunch of people's attention and had a bunch of articles. And it was more to shine the light on the fact that Microsoft wasn't being friendly to developers. In the end, got to a lot of cool stuff, but I learned some really important lessons along the way, which I want to walk through some of those and how they apply now to my new life as an independent developer. I'm now a token independent developer. So first one is the case of the stolen video games. This one, how many people know who this person is? This is Tim Schafer of Double Fine Productions, many of you know. I am a huge Tim Schafer fan. I've been a huge fan of his for many, many years. And so I have this new job at PlayStation, and I have power, and I have authority, and I can do things. And so I was like, I'm a big fan of all of his games that he did at LucasArts. So, and I have this vice president role now, so I can go and call people and do things. So I ended up phoning LucasArts, who had the rights to all of the old games, right? Full Throttle and Maniac Mansion and Grim Fandango and all those other games. I called them up and I said, hey, we want to get all those IPs back because you guys have them, you're doing nothing with them, want to do HD remixes and all that cool stuff. And Lucas like, sounds great, let's talk more. And during the process, Lucas got sold to none other than the Walt Disney Company. They bought LucasArts for 2.5 million, 2.5 billion. Yeah, which in comparison, I think, oh no, it was 4, was it 4 billion? Anyway, it was 2.5 because I think Minecraft was 4, which was hilarious, right? That LucasArts got sold for almost half of Minecraft. So we got Walt Disney Company buys LucasArts, so I'm like, oh, who do I talk to now? Because Walt Disney Company is a huge organization. So I call them up, and I'm like, hello, I'm a big fan of all these awesome IPs. Day of the Tentacle, Grim Fandango, Full Throttle, Monkey Island, Loom, for those of you who are going way back in the nerd, that was one of my favorites. And Mickey said, new phone, who dis? Disney didn't do a lot of licensing to this kind of stuff. So what I did is I ended up working on a bunch of different angles to try to free up the IPs, and the vision and goal was always to allow Double Fine to make those games. But I forgot one part of the step. My phone rings one day and it's Tim Schafer. And he says, hey, we've heard rumors that somebody's trying to negotiate from Disney to get all of my old IPs back. And I was like, yeah? And he's like, yeah, some heartless, soulless company is trying to steal all my babies, and I want them. And I was like, that's me? And so he gets really, 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 really mad because what I didn't realize is during my whole thought process of I have this new position, let me go out and get all those cool IPs, I never talked to Tim. And I never told him what my idea was. So I was doing all these negotiations and discussions in the back channel without ever having asked him for his permission. So I take my electric Fiat that I was leasing at the time in California. And I go to their office, which is about a half-hour drive away, knock on the door, and they put me in the darkest, dingiest conference room I've ever been in my life. And there's literally 2 seats. It's totally like an interrogation room, and it's dark. And the weirdest thing is I've met Tim Schafer at this point like 6 or 8 times. Like, we kind of know each other. But man, when he walked in that room, there was like, you do not, what are you doing? There was no love. And I was like, okay, so here was my big idea. And I sort of go through everything, and he's like, but why were you trying to take them? And I'm like, no, I wanted to take them and give them to you. He's like, well, I need to be part of that discussion process. So we had a long chat, and we ended up doing a partnership. It took a long time to get across the line, but Grim Fandango remastered, Day of the Tentacle remastered, Full Throttle remastered, and so Tim got all of his babies back. I learned a really important lesson, which is you should probably ask permission, because if you ask forgiveness, people don't really trust you, and they can make you super aggro. So the good news is, it was a nice end of the story. To this day, Tim and I are really close. We had him on stage at E3 to sort of announce the partnership. Was really cool. But it took a lot of I'm sorries. And in Canadian, that's a big deal, because we don't say that word very often. Next story I want to tell is the origin of the PlayStation Experience. So for those of you who don't know, PlayStation Experience was this big conference that we started putting on a couple years after I started. And I've been to a lot of different conferences around the world. One of the cool benefits of having my job at PlayStation, I got invited to go to Brazil Game Show, which is 300,000 people. Went to Paris Games Week, went to GDC, obviously DICE, E3, and PAX. And I always loved going to shows. BlizzCon was one of my favorites just because it's a bunch of fans celebrating what's great about the content. And I got an invite from CCP. So CCP is based in Reykjavik, that's in Iceland. They're makers of EVE Online. How many people are familiar with EVE Online? A handful of people, good. So when they said, we want you to come up and meet with us and check out the show, I'm like, yeah, Iceland. I forgot, my mom told me when I was a kid that we were part Icelandic, and I misheard her and thought we were Norwegian. So my whole life, I've thought I was from partly Norway. And so I was in Iceland, and my mom's like, it's so nice. When you went there, did you meet some of our relatives? I was like, I was in Norway, Mom. She's like, we're from Iceland, Adam. So anyway, needless to say, in April, we're going back to actually meet with our family. But anyway, we went to this beautiful place. It was amazing. And EVE Online is the craziest game on the planet. This game is an interactive Excel spreadsheet where people spend years and years and years of their lives just meticulously changing stats. It's not a real game. It's just it's a game, but it's like an accountant's game. But people are fervent. They're crazy. There's all these different factions within the universe, and these people are religious. They'll have tattoos of their factions, and they live, eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. And the funny little side note is this guy, there's a guy called the Mutani, okay? And this is a real life human being. It turns out he's a lawyer from New Jersey that basically built one of the factions and become really popular in the game. And at one point owned 35% of all of the sort of factions. And he could have influence over the entirety of the game. So I was at a big executive meeting with the CEO of CCP, and he gets a phone call, he picks up the phone, and he's like, I gotta cancel our meeting. I'm like, well, we're from PlayStation. We traveled a long way to get here for this meeting. And he goes, the Mutani is here. And he canceled his meeting with me because the Mutani had showed up with 2 bouncers to meet with the CEO of CCP. And that just goes to show how crazy that world was. They actually ended up writing a whole entire book series of the stories that people had uncovered in the game. It's bananas. And my other favorite part is the Mutani tried hitting on my wife who was there, and he's like, which faction are you from? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He was like, I'm the Mutani. She's like, that's cool, can you pass me water? He's like, I have no game. Anyway, the thing that was really special about that show is there was a ton of intimacy. So what CCP decided to do is they would bring in some of the best players in the world, so the 6 best combat specialists in the world, and they would bring in and they would meet with their whole combat design team in a private room for 3 hours. All the best economists in the world, players, would meet with all the economy designers. And it was so special because basically it was a really intimate experience where the best and brightest players were helping guide and give feedback on the game. And I'd never really seen that before. I'd never seen that sort of conversation and discussions. And sort of that's where I really got inspired. And I was like, man, we don't, as a platform, at PlayStation, we don't have those conversations with our players, right? People tweet at me or they'll send me a message, but we don't have a sit down, let's talk about things, let's have camaraderie around it. So I came back, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, back to San Mateo, California, and I was like, let's take gamers and bring us all together and have a big, huge conference. I think it would be awesome, and I think we should do it this year. And they said there was no money. and so I convinced enough people, though, and I was like, well, please, can I have some money, please? So what we did is we actually ended up going to a bunch of the publishers and said, hey, we want to do this show, and we want to do it in 5 months. We want to do it in December, the start of December, where no other show is happening, and we sort of want to own the hearts and minds of gamers through the whole sort of holiday season. And it ended up that publishers were very angry at first, and so was our executive management team, because they knew this would cost millions and millions of dollars. But the morning that we did the first one in Las Vegas, Nevada, and the morning that we got up to go to the keynote, there was a line that was 3,000 people long that skewed through the entire casino and out the other side. And it was the coolest feeling to have all of our fans. We had enough seats for every single person that bought a ticket. So we had 15,000 seats in the room. And it was a very special, that whole weekend was incredible. So overall, we got it done. It happened. People showed up. We ended up doing it for a bunch of years. And it was just one of the coolest things that I've ever accomplished. But I'm the third-party guy. I'm not the events guy. It doesn't matter because we had this vision, and we thought really big. And then we kept pitching it and kept pitching and got the company to believe in it. So we thought big. We thought we would do something neat and different, and they let us do it, which was really neat. Now, I learned another good lesson when marketing. You guys know Funny or Die? People have heard of it, right? And most of you probably know who this is, right? Zach Galifianakis, Between Two Ferns, which just released as a movie. Who knew that it was that popular that it would become a movie? So it's now out on Netflix. I have not seen it yet, but I definitely will. And then I mentioned Shu Yoshida earlier, who is the head of Worldwide Studios. So we wanted to promote the PlayStation experience, and we want to create like a viral series. But anytime anyone ever sits down at a table and says, we want to create a viral series, they're an idiot, because you can't really create virality, right? We would just want to create something fun and interesting. And so what we did is we took the concept, and we're like, what if it was between shoe ferns, and we put Shu's photos in the ferns, and so you're talking between shoe ferns. And then we'll bring on cool guests in the games industry, like Tim Schafer. So we have this idea, and of course our lawyers are like, you can't do this. You can't steal someone else's IP and use it to promote something especially. So one of the guys on my team goes, hey, I know a senior vice president at Funny or Die. And so we set up a call with him, and he brought his lawyer to the call. And we said, hey, we're doing this crazy idea to promote this gaming event. We're just doing like a parody. It's going to be funny and cute. And they're like, no problem. You can do it. And I was like, what? I'm like, can you send that an email? He's like, absolutely not. I will not tell you an email you can do it, but I'll tell you over the phone, no problem. Fire it up. So I'm going to show you 4 of the most awkward promotional skits that we did for Between Shoe Ferns to promote the PlayStation experience.
Hello, and welcome to Between Shoe Ferns. I'm joined today by the VIP, publisher and developer revelations, Mr. Adam Louis.
It's always the old title.
So you talked a lot about Destiny at E3 earlier this year. How long did it take you to make an indie game like that?
Well, it's not an indie game. Destiny was made by a huge team of people at Bungie that have been slaving for
So you don't make games.
I do not.
What do you actually do at PlayStation?
Well, I work with publishers and developers all around the world to make sure that great content comes to the platform.
Oh, I see. So you don't actually do anything. Hi, and welcome to Between Shoe Ferns. I'm joined today by the director of third-party production, Mr. Dino Corgi.
It's Gio Corsi.
Okay, Leo, tell us a little bit about hashtag building the Sure, great. Building the List was a campaign we started on Twitter about a year ago where we wanted our fans to tell us which games they really wanted to see
Okay,
on
here's
Play.
cool. I have some games that I'd like to add to your list.
Oh, okay.
Here we go. Paper Boys to Men.
No.
ShamWow 4, the infomercial. The Bouncer 3, Sir, You're Not on the List. Legend of the Dragoonies, starring Corey Feldman. Michael Baywatch, a game where you protect beaches from explosions.
Great. At PlayStation Experience, we're going to have some great updates about Building the List. We're going to have some announcements.
Okay,
We have some playable demos.
How about this? Sourdough baguette, born and bred.
We got two more.
Hi, and welcome to Between Shoe Ferns. I'm here with legendary game designer Tim Schafer, here to talk about Grid Fandango. Tim, you've been working on this game for more than 16 years, since you were in your late 40s back in 1998. How does it feel to have your game finally come to life?
We didn't work on that whole time. We were, there was place in between when we were working on other games. And then we were remastering it.
Okay, listen.
Came
the
out.
video- you do know that the video game industry has changed quite a bit since the late 90s. And I guess I'm wondering, do you think your game has enough dubstep?
All right, last one.
Hey, welcome back to Between Shoe Ferns. I'm here with Adam Boyes, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the PlayStation experience.
Yeah, it's this new event we have coming up for fans, December 6th and 7th in Las Vegas. We got playable games, we got all kinds of new
So,
announcements. We
Adam,
got,
Mr. Boyes, you are Canadian, right?
yes, yeah, probably.
What does that have to do with video games?
Nothing. I have a green card.
Exactly.
So we did the 4 series, and we put them out, and the views just started like absolutely going up, skyrocketing, which was pretty crazy because we're like, oh, it's just a goofy idea. We wanted to make it as awkward the tone of the show, so that's why the laughs are few and far between. But we totally nailed it. And then our phone rings, and it's Funny or Die, and they go, okay, we know that we have the chat. Zach saw the videos. And we're like, whoa, that's amazing. He's like, he loved them. He thought they were hilarious. And we're like, holy crap, that's so cool. Like, is he going to retweet them? And they're like, he wants them taken down. He's like, they're way too close to what the actual show is. They're way too on point. Like, when you guys asked us to do this parody thing, we thought it would be like the schlocky thing. It looks like our show. We're like, yeah, that's the parody part. He's like, Zach said absolutely not. He loves them, take them down. And so our approval went from that quickly to a cease and desist from them. So we had to take them down within about 30 hours of putting them up. So this is now when you search for them, you can still find them, by the way. They're just on smaller channels. But what we learned the lesson there was get it in writing, right? Obviously, we should have gotten it in writing from them. In the end, we spent a lot of time and effort writing those sketches and doing the whole performance, and we had to throw it all out the window. So the big lessons that I learned at PlayStation, obviously thinking big, shooting for the stars, asking permission, and getting things in writing. Then after about 4.5 years, I decided to leave PlayStation. I loved my job there. I had an awesome time, but I really wanted to make games again. And so I moved to Chicago, Illinois with my wonderful family who's here right now, and wanted to make games with some of my old friends I'd worked with at Midway. So Iron Galaxy is a studio based in Chicago and Orlando. We work with all kinds of awesome partners on a lot of ports and original stuff as well. This origin story starts from Midway. I had moved to Chicago in 2003. I got put on I was going to be put on NHL Hits Pro 2. I was very excited because as a kid from small town Canada, I get to make a hockey game. I'm so happy. And the first week I got there, they canceled my game. and they put me on Slugfest, loaded. So that's where Dave, our founder, and I met. And then he started the company about 3 years later after Midway went out of business. We now have the 2 studios in Orlando and Chicago. We've got over 140 people. We basically work on all types of platforms and all kinds of technologies. We're a very engineering-focused house. We've been lead developers on stuff like Killer Instinct, Racketeer, Divekick. We've done a lot of ports. We're working on Overwatch for Switch, which comes out on Tuesday, so please buy that. Skyrim, Diablo for Switch, Crash, and Spyro. And we do a lot of tech work for hire as well. So we've done, worked on Fortnite, worked on Fallout, Bethesda, a lot of Skyrim and stuff like that. So we've kind of worked with a lot of different companies all around the planet, which is really neat. But obviously, I was like, how am I going to take these lessons that I learned at PlayStation and apply them on a smaller scale? So the first one was when I came on board, I was like, hey, the Skyrim Switch is really doing well. Why don't we make a list of all the games we want to port over to Switch? And of course, I'd worked on PlayStation for a long time, so I made my list of all my top 10 favorite games that I was playing on, PS3, PS4, Xbox 360. I sent it to Nintendo, and I was like, these are the 10 games we want to port. And they're like, cool story. We don't own those games. Those are all publisher games. And I was like, right. So I need to go to publisher first. Right, of course. They're like, this list looks great. If you guys could port all these games, we'd have a lot of awesome content. And so, this is the dumbest story. Friend of mine is a producer at Blizzard. So I go onto Twitter, because that's how you do business these days, I guess. And I send a direct message to my friend who's a producer at Blizzard. And I said, I love me some Diablo 3, and I would love to play it on the go. And he's like, I'm your friend. You don't have to talk like you're a weird commercial. And so he said, I know exactly who you should talk to. And he set up a call with Alan Adham, who was one of the original founders of Silicon Synapse, which became Blizzard. And so Alan and I had a chat, and I was just like, I'm a huge fan, and I love Diablo. And when I was at PlayStation, I had done the Diablo 3 partnership for PS4. And I'm just like, and the Switch is amazing. And he's like, okay. So he hands me off to the head of the Classic Games label, Rob Breidenbecker. What I didn't know at the time, first of all, he tells Rob that, hey, this Adam guy from Iron Galaxy seems like the real deal. He's kind of chatty, comes with the territory. So I talked to Rob. He's like, great, I want to fly you out to BlizzCon and we can have an official meeting to talk about it. And I said, I'm already going to BlizzCon, of course. I've been going for 10 years. So we had a 2-hour lunch. At the end of lunch, he shook my hand and said, you guys have the deal. I was like, this is not how business works. What we didn't know at the time is that they had already greenlit the project internally. They had already found a bunch of other developers that basically were bidding on the project. They didn't know who we were. We just came out of the field. But because of the work we had done with Skyrim and a lot of sort of live services, we were the first external studio in 18 years that Blizzard's ever trusted with their source code. So it was kind of a fun thing. And that was just because of a dumb idea and a DM on Twitter led to us being able to work with Blizzard, and now on Overwatch for Switch as well. So that was kind of how I applied that first lesson. The second one is I used to work at Capcom, and so I thought one night, it was about 2 in the morning, my wife was soundly asleep beside me. I was about my 3rd bourbon in, playing Monster Hunter, and there was an article from Capcom saying that they couldn't port Monster Hunter because it was too technically difficult. And so in all of my 2 a.m. wisdom, I go, Dear Monster Hunter, team at Capcom, we understand that porting the game to Nintendo Switch is challenging, linked to the article, but this is exactly what Iron Galaxy I to the G does. Give us a shot and we won't let you down. And the time is 1:44 a.m. That's when I sent it. That's when you come up with big, huge, dumb ideas. First update is, there is no update, but the Monday morning I come to the office, and Dave, our founder, who's this big, tall, lumbering shout monster, he comes in, he goes, saw your tweet. I'm like, yeah? He's like, so is this how we do business now? We just tweet things out on the internet and hope that business happens? This is how we do business? And I'm like, I was carried away. It was a lot of fun. I just wanted to make the game. He's like, this is the stupidest. And then the next day the phone rings, and it's another publisher that's saying, hey, I saw the article on IGN about how you guys want to port Monster Hunter. We have this other game we want to port to Switch. And we started getting phone calls from the PR around the article. Of course, Capcom never called us, because this is not how you do business. But the weird serendipity that happened is that we ended up getting calls for other ports around the industry, which was kind of crazy. And Dave was so mad. He was livid. He's like, "God damn, this shouldn't have worked. God damn you, Adam." So that's how the Axe Permission, even though it had good intentions. So now everyone jokes, like, are you just going to ask to port it online? Is that how we're going to do business again? Maybe. The last one, get it in writing. This is where it actually worked well. So we were working on a game recently, and we were relying on middleware from another developer. So basically, we were doing the game XYZ, have to anonymize everything. The middleware was being developed by another developer, but that middleware was critical to us shipping on time. And the publisher was like, they're going to be done on time. And we're like, nah, we don't think they will. Our team's pretty smart. You know, we got 65 engineers, pretty smart guys. I don't think they're going to be done. And so the publisher was like, they'll absolutely be done. And we're like, okay. Then we want to add a clause in the contract that says for every day that they aren't done and we have to get pushed, you're going to pay us like $5,000 a day. And they're like, that's crazy. We would never put that in. I'm like, but you said it's going to be done on time. So put it in the contract. And they're like, but it will be done on time. We're like, right, so contract's easy. They put it in the contract. The middleware was over 100 days late. And that's where, when you get something in writing, it can pay off quite fruitfully. Of course, we negotiate down because they missed that clause when they're like, oh, we owe you how much? I'm like, we put it in writing. So that's why you get things in writing. So thank you very much. That's a bunch of stories from me. And I'd love to open up Q&A. I have another little section, but I'd rather answer people's questions or tell other stories if anyone wants to hear more. Questions? Yes?
So, on the subject of the Tim Schafer thing.
Sure.
If you were going to do that again with some other IPs.
Yeah.
It just seems to me like it would be very difficult to go through all the proper channels to be like, okay, we need to ask this guy and this guy. Like,
Yeah.
what would you do differently?
I would have probably like done some of the exploration calls first and then talked to Tim early on. Like that's what we did with Shenmue, right? When we heard all the buzz, we ended up reaching out to Yu Suzuki and going to Tokyo to meet with him and said, hey, there's so much demand. And he goes, I know, but I can't find a publisher that will fund it. And I was like, well, what if we did a partnership and we launched it on stage and we did this Kickstarter? And that way he was along for the ride and the process, which made things a lot easier. So for us, it was about, I would have looped in Tim earlier and made it so it's both of us at the same time. Luckily, I have enough charm that he didn't strangle me in that meeting. But it could have gone very differently. It could have gone very, very differently. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
This might be, I don't know, we already talked about it, but like your most memorable experience from the position at PlayStation?
I think the most memorable, all of these are going to sound like the worst humble brags because I got to do so many cool things. The very first NFL game I ever went to was the Super Bowl. And that was a perk. I got to go to the World Cup in Brazil, and so sporting events were like incredible. That was amazing. It was a pinch me. But I think my personal one, which was the most like balling out of control thing, was when we were in the PlayStation 4 Pro was in development. We had to go and meet with all the studios, all the publishers, and so we were at HQ, and Andy House, who was our CEO, group CEO at the time, we're hanging out, and he goes, we have to do these 5 meetings. We have to go to New York, we have to go to Santa Monica, we have to go to Seattle, we have to go to San Francisco, and I'm like, that's a lot of travel. And Mark Cerny was with us, who created the architecture for the PS4, and Mark goes, hey, you should call Kaz Hirai, who was the CEO of Sony, and goes, you should ask for the private jet. I was like, wait, there's a private jet? And it turns out Sony has 2 private jets. They have a Sony Music private jet, and they have a Sony Pictures private jet, but PlayStation had never used them before. And so we're having some drinks, we're like, Andy, do it. And so Andy finally picks up his phone, he's like, I'll text Kaz. I'll say we want to get the jet. Hour later comes back, he's like, we got the jet! They're like, what? He's like, we're gonna take the private jet all around North America. And you think like a big baller CEO that's like running the whole thing is like gonna be all cool, calm, and collected. Absolutely not. He's taking selfies on the runway, and we get in the jet, and we're all hanging out. We're like, holy crap, we can't believe it. and then all of the liquor in the whole jet has like Post-it notes of which CEOs from the other companies, like, this is my white wine. And then we're like Googling, like, that's a $15 bottle from Costco, bro. Like, why is your Post-it note on it when you make $6 million a year, whatever it is? And then I ended up, they had a power port, so I ended up plugging in my monitor and PS4 and played Fallout 4 the whole entire flight over to New York. And Mark Cerny was taking photos of me. He's like, I can't believe you're such a gamer. I'm like, it's what we do, baby. So it was just the coolest experience, one of the coolest memories. Other questions? More questions? Yeah?
Yeah, is it public what Iron Galaxy is doing in the VR space?
We did work on, so we've done a few things. We worked with CCP on Spark. That was a cool, like, interactive, like, almost like a dodgeball game. And then we also did some performance stuff on Fallout VR and Skyrim VR. And aside from that, no, we've done a bunch of pitches. We're kind of one of those companies that loves to do a lot of different things, a lot of different verticals. So we have a bunch of Oculus Quests we love messing around with. We have some HoloLens kits. So we're always trying to nerd out, but nothing else that I can publicly talk about. Yeah. Other questions? Yes?
Talking about those middle of the night epiphanies,
Yeah.
do you have any more that you can talk about that you've been able to act on the right way versus just throwing out a 1 a.m. tweet?
Yeah, I mean, the Diablo one was that, because it was like prescribed, because it was like, oh, I'll let you hear the 10 games that I want to make. That was a good example. Sometimes, yes, it comes off. I think there's a term in Japanese called nemowashi. And nemowashi is one of the most important ideas and ideals and words that I've ever learned in my whole career. And that is gaining consensus before you have the meeting. So making sure you talk to all the different individuals that are involved in the process, and you're getting all the alignment. And so when we were greenlighting PlayStation Experience, I met with the events team, I met with PR, I met with marketing, I met with every single other group and got their alignment before we went to our CEO and then to Andy House and had to get all the big money. So to me, that is the most important thing on the planet. Not surprising people in meetings and just making sure they already know beforehand, hey, by the way, this is coming, don't tell anyone, da-da-da. So by the time you're at the meeting, it was like, yeah, I know. That's super, super important, and that's the biggest lesson I've learned, especially now that there's 3 partners at Iron Galaxy. It's a very flat organization. We're not big believers in titles, and so whenever I have a new big shiny idea, which happened a lot when I first started, and Dave's like, you're adorable, all these big ideas. Even when I called him after the Blizzard lunch and said, we got the business, he was like, that's not how this works. People don't shake your hand and then you have a contract. And a week later, I was in Irvine doing the contract with Blizzard. He's like, you son of a, I hate you. So yeah, I think that the process of getting people aligned, getting them on the same page is super, super critical, which I didn't do with Tim. And I learned over time. The first thing I did when I got a PlayStation, because I didn't know, I was horribly underqualified for that job, but they believed in me. And so the first thing I did is I heard that we weren't getting along, our department wasn't getting along with another department. So I went over there with 2 dozen roses and a 5-pound bag of M&Ms, and I said, I'm sorry that my team has done you wrong in the past. How can I fix it? And what can we do in the future? And explain to me your whole business like I'm 5, because mentally I'm pretty much just 5. And then they did that. And as soon as they did that and started walking through their business and how it works, puts them in a power position, you're allowed to understand their perspective and what their goals are. And then what I did is I took everyone in other departments' goals and made them part of my team's goals. I didn't ask them to reciprocate. I didn't say, hey, if I do that for you, you do that for me. I just made our goals in our team part of everyone else's. So every time we were doing anything, it was helping other departments. And that was almost like instant gratification, because the team's like, why are you helping us? I'm like, because it's one PlayStation. We should all be trying to do the right thing together. Cool. Other questions? Yes.
So, I'm going to go back. I'm an educator at UC, so I'm going to go
Awesome.
back. I got a lot of talented
Yeah.
developers here.
Cool.
I'm going to tell them I met you.
Okay.
What can I tell them from you? Because they're right now in like hustle mode. They're just trying to learn.
Yeah.
Playing around.
Yeah.
They haven't made it to the stage yet.
Sure.
What can I tell them to motivate and inspire them?
I think the biggest couple things are, I'll give you the short-term answer and then the longer-term answer. The short-term answer is make. Always making, always be making, always be building your portfolio. That's super, super, super critical. And then hustle, but hustle out there in the world through social media. Get to know developers, respond to their tweets or their posts on Instagram, and become friendly. It's a very, very friendly industry. When it comes to the dev side of things, we have each other's backs and stuff like that. And for that reason, if you want to get in with someone, I think it's really important to get to know them sort of through social media. And it's weird because you don't think it'll work. I have people that come up to me like, we've met before. I'm like, have we? Yeah, I follow you on Twitter. This is my name. I'm like, oh crap, yeah, that post you did the other day was amazing. So that's really important for them to get to know and increase their circle, get to networking, meet people, cold call, whatever it takes. Because a lot of people in the development world came from nothing and want to give back. And so you'll be surprised how many people randomly will hit me up on DM and be like, can I just ask you 2 questions? I'm like, let's do a call. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. I mean, the least I could do now is give my time back to the future generation versus because people did that when I was, I left EA after being there for 3 years because I saw an article in our newspaper in Vancouver, the Vancouver Sun, and it was the top 10 new startups in Vancouver. And I emailed all of them, first letter, last name at company.com, first name, last name, I just guessed, right? Out of 10 of them, 6 replied to my email. 3 of them wanted to talk. 2 of them wanted to have lunch. 1 of them offered me a job. What? What? I was 22, and he offered me a job to run his QA department. So I left games for a couple years. But that's the kind of thing of hacking the system to try to get people to notice you, which is way harder in this day and age where just all kinds of things. So those are the things in the short term. In the long term, aspirationally, the most important thing I learned, and I talked about this in our 11 o'clock, is I didn't realize this about 5 years ago, that in any job you get, you need to make sure it has at least one of these 3 things, okay? A path to mastery, autonomy, or a sense of purpose. If your job doesn't have one of those 3 things, get another job. If your job has more than one of those 3 things, you're golden, right? I found with me and my path that I didn't have any 3 of those things anymore at PlayStation. That's one of the things to me that I was like, I want to do new stuff, and then I did a whole retro on my whole career of when I've been the happiest, and I'm the happiest when I'm making things with other people. So that's really important, I think, in the long-term stuff. It's hard in the first 5 years because you got to kill to eat. You're digging ditches. You're doing whatever it takes to pay the bills, and so you can't. It's you want to be aspirational, but at the same time you got to pay your dues. And I think that's the part that's really hard. Never compromise for culture. Never compromise for crunch either. You don't have to crunch. You don't have to be around people that are bigoted and stuff like that. I think that stuff's super important too. And interviewing the company as they interview you, I think, is really important too, for what they stand for, who they are, and what their values are. Cool. Got time for a couple. Yes. Actually, let me go behind you first because he hasn't asked one yet.
So kind of a personal question. So
Sure.
funny enough, I
6'4". Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking how tall I was.
funny enough, I actually I work for PlayStation.
Awesome.
I'm the Columbus PlayStation vendor.
Cool. Fantastic.
It was a dream come true. I honestly was very surprised. It happened a lot sooner than I expected.
Cool.
So I know the sky's the limit with gaming.
Yeah.
There's so many different things you can do, and I've personally just tried to think about what do I want to do next? What are the options? What more can you do?
Yeah.
And for you, it seems like moving from PlayStation to Iron Galaxy was a very big decision.
Yeah.
Definitely not an easy one.
No.
So my question is do you have any advice or just anything you could tell yourself in the past about what do you want to do next when it feels like you've kind of hit your goal?
Sure. Most of my transitions have been sort of weird serendipity, or just I'm a big believer, and this is going to sound a little bit hooky, but I believe in the universe telling you things, and when it tells you something, you just got to do it. When I left, I left PlayStation, one of the first company that hired me from the newspaper. Then I moved to Ireland to work for a company over there because I heard that the job market was amazing, and I applied and I got a job, and I moved by myself, 26, pulled my stuff in a hockey goalie bag because they're really big enough for all of my things that I owned, and I flew there because I was just it's cool, it's neat, it's something new, they're going to pay me, and so getting out of your comfort zone is the biggest thing that makes you grow. And sometimes you're going to fall and fail, but that stuff makes you transformatively more of a well-rounded person. what we're going to do with our kids, for example, like I believe in traveling and experiencing different things around the world, and I got to do that when I was a kid, and that taught me so much about the world around us and putting ourselves in other people's shoes, and that allows you to sort of live almost in that edge of the bit of uncomfortability, which I think is really, really important. So make yourself a little bit uncomfortable. Some people can stay for a long time, that's okay. It's just, telling my wife I have this amazing job and I want to leave to move to Chicago to join Dave Lang and give up everything. She's like, are you out of your mind? That guy's a maniac. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of why I like him. But that's the kind of stuff of like, it was a lot of soul searching for me. And so sometimes it feels right, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you make a decision. Here's another good example. My friend John Vignacchi, who worked at Disney. He ran the Disney Infinity franchise. When that got closed down, he went and did some startup-y stuff, and a couple years was basically off the grid. He was like, I'm losing my edge. I'm like, it'll come back. It's all going to come back. You put good work in, you get good work out. And now he's the head of third party at Nintendo. He just landed that job like 4 months ago. So there was like a 3-year sort of hiatus. He worked at Gearbox as well, but now he's sort of back and doing crazy things over at Nintendo. And so to me, it's going to take work. You might make some bad decisions, but everything I look at, it's like everywhere I've lived, every job I've ever had, it taught me something. And that's the most important thing, is as long as you take out learnings from it and don't think you're smarter than everyone else, then you'll be fine. Yeah. Congrats on getting that job, too. All right, time's up. Thank you all very much for having me today. I'll be around for the next bit. Want to answer more questions. Thank you.